So Micah McElveen here with Vapor Ministries. We get to work in some of the poorest slums on planet Earth, mobilizing the church to bring spiritual, economic, and social impact. It's my privilege to get to host partner, friend, pastor Chris Hodges. Just a couple things up front. We met about 14 years ago. My bride and I got to meet PC and his wife, and really fell in love with this underlying passion to reach the one, to go after the lost sheep. If you know anything about Pastor Chris and know anything about Highlands, there is an undying passion to reach the lost, to go after those that don't have easy access to Christ. And so many people don't know, but Church of the Highlands is our largest church partner. They're very dedicated to mission here and around the world. And it's been a privilege to get to enjoy a partnership with them over the last set of years. And so today we have the opportunity to talk with PC, with Pastor Chris Hodges, about this idea of moving forward in uncertain times. We're all experiencing uncertainty, and really just this principle of what's next. How do we take next steps and navigate our way through uncertainty? And so Pastor Chris, before we dive in, I would love for you to just introduce yourself, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Micah. You're a blessing, my friend, and it's a joy to be a part of all that Vapor puts their hands to. And you steward your influence and our resources very, very well. Where do I begin? I was born at an early age. No, I'm just kidding. I've been in ministry 37 years. I planted Church of the Highlands 19 years ago, and never dreamed that it would be what it is today. But as you said, really had this deepest passion really to reach people with my own testimony. I was raised in church and didn't know God. I've never missed a Sunday in church in my entire life, and to date. And but I spent a lot of those years just in church and did not have a clue who God was. Had gone through the religious motions, and but was really so far from God. And so I laugh with my pastor friends and I say I lead Christians to the Lord every Sunday, and which is not even theologically correct. But what I do is for people who really are in this Bible belt and maybe like me have a relationship with the church but don't know God. It is my joy to share with them not just religion but a powerful relationship with a very real and alive God. So that's a little bit of the story.
Well, let me just say before we dive in, on a personal level, I know Pastor Chris is pastor, also consider him friend. In his words, if you're a part of Church of the Highlands, your family, and then also personally a mentor. I consider him a mentor to myself. And on that note, PC, last time we had a mentoring session, we were supposed to meet at Starbucks, and I texted you. You said, "Hey, come on to the office," and I said I'm casual. And when I came to the office, you didn't realize I was in a t-shirt and shorts. You said, "You really are casual." So in honor of you, I actually wore a suit coat today. So I just wanted you to know I came prepared today, brother.
You're looking good, my friend. You're looking good.
Thank you. So Pastor Chris Hodges, Church of the Highlands, if you'll just take a quick moment, we're going to talk about what's next, this idea of moving forward in uncertainty. So share this link with some friends, anybody that you could think that could benefit from this time. There's going to be, PC is going to be dropping some dimes, giving us some value that'll help us in this time. So make sure you invite some friends now, extend it, and we're going to dive right in. What's next, moving forward in uncertain times? So just to open up, Chris, a hallmark of your ministry has really been helping people take practical next steps. And you wrote a book on the subject. Would you just tell us a little bit about the heart behind the book?
Yeah, and we're seeing it, by the way, accelerated during this pandemic, that when people are confused and when there's a vacuum in their life, they try to fill it with things, but most people fill it with the wrong things because they don't have a clear path. So Proverbs 29, the famous, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." I love it out of the Message paraphrase. It says, if people can't see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. But when they attend to what he reveals, they are the most blessed. Well, the truth is most people they don't know what's available to them in the spiritual life. So it'd be like going to a city as a tourist, and you have no tour guide. You don't even know what's there. You don't know the best places to eat. You don't know the sites, and you'll stumble around, try to figure it out. You might hit on a few accidentally, and a lot of people do that. But what I like to do is kind of serve as people's spiritual tour guide and make sure that they know that God has some amazing things planned for them that he's had in his heart from the very beginning. I can take you from Exodus to Revelation and show at least 14 places where God has always wanted the same four things, said different ways, but God has always wanted these same four things for people. And when you go through the spiritual journey or the spiritual progression, I mean, that's when you're hitting on all cylinders and your life's blessed and it feels not perfect but fulfilled. And so that's what I do. I'm a tour guide.
That's awesome, PC. So I want to talk a little bit about this time we're in, and broader than that. But as you know, sometimes somebody can kind of get in a rhythm, and maybe it's even a good rhythm, and then all of a sudden they feel very thrown off by just so much uncertainty. So what would be your word of encouragement, if you will, to those that have felt themselves kind of getting paralyzed in this unique period? How do you move forward now?
Yeah, I would be surprised if people haven't felt that way, by the way, because the crisis does that to us. In fact, the crisis has stripped from us the two building blocks of all humanity, Christian or not, by the way. Human beings were made, they had this basic need for two things, and that is connections, relational connections, which is the foundation of humanity. In fact, the very first thing that God spoke to as a problem wasn't sin, it was solitude. Long before there was sin, it is not good for a man to be alone. And we were made for relational connections, and those have been stripped from us. Yeah. And then the second building block of all humanity, what creates calm, what puts our lives in order, is structures and routines. Well, those have been taken from us. Yeah. So we've been told you have to stay at home, you have to not go to work, you can't go to restaurants. Well, these were the things that actually built, they weren't there just for pleasure. They were there for order, and the order brings this sense of security into our lives. Well, we've had both connections, relational connections, and structures and routines ripped from our lives, really, in an effort to try to flatten the curve of the pandemic, which is fine. I'm for it. But what we have to do is make sure we replaced those two things in a new reality. Yeah. So while we are physically distancing, I hate, by the way, the phrase social distancing. I never did like it, because you can be physically distant, but you have to be socially connected. I mean, we need each other. And but that's what we need to do that. We need to recreate ways to connect. And we're doing it right now on this Facebook Live. And that's, your intuitive leadership knows that, I bet the people who follow Vapor and my friends would love to have some relational connections because they're at home, and well done. And then, but also recreating some new structures into our everyday lives that even though if we don't have somewhere to go, or we're not working right now, still set the alarm, work out, make your bed, take a shower, spend time with God, and set some appointments of your day, even though that structure's not necessarily needed. It's actually very, very needed to bring order to our lives and strength to our lives.
So just how important, PC, would you say those little things? You mentioned some game changers, be in the word. You also mentioned some other things that people may kind of just be like, what? That's not important. Talk about how important it is, some of those little things from your perspective.
Yeah, for me, I always say it this way, Micah, that all's well that begins well. It's not all's well that ends well. It's if you can master the first part of your day and really kind of set your mind and your heart and your values and even your tasks in order to begin the day, that little bit of time has the power to impact the rest. It's kind of like the tide. It's kind of like anything first. Whatever you do first impacts the rest. And so I encourage people, master your mornings. That first 15, 30 minutes, hour of the day, for me, I get in God's word, I spend time in prayer, and then I think about 3 tasks that if I get these 3 tasks accomplished today, I can call today success, and actually physically write them down. It sounds so silly. Oh, can't I just have them in my mind? But actually put them on paper and just kind of order my day. And it is those little things, all's well that starts well, that can have such a huge impact into the rest of your day.
I think that's such an important word. We can kind of get accustomed to having that order in the routine. And if we're not careful, as things are swirling, we throw all that out the window. And to your point, we got to grab the main things and then embed them and marry them into a unique reality, and not just wait until things get back to feeling like they used to.
Right.
You're
exactly right.
Thoughts. So let me ask this, Chris. So the person that is saying, hey, I'm starting to do some of those things, and I'm starting to kind of plus, and they start to feel like they're getting some momentum. What would you say to the person that is really trying to build momentum now? They got through the wonkiness, the weirdness of the first few weeks, and they're really wanting to get some traction. What's your advice to them as they continue to try to move forward?
Yeah, just the main thing is to have a clear path. So, if you don't, it's kind of like, remember the old Charlie Brown? He would shoot the arrow and then go draw the target around the arrow. And a lot of people live their lives that way. So they kind of just like, they just fire and then it's ready, aim. And I think it's important to have just clear direction for our lives, which begins with knowing God's clear direction for your life, that you were made, as I like to say it, to know God, find freedom, discover your purpose, and make a difference. But I think the momentum is found in the call of God on our life. I think momentum is found not just in existing and paying bills and living through a day, but knowing what your life's purpose is.
So if we're kind of pulling some of that together, you got to get over the swirl, begin to do some of the small things, get some rhythm back, and then really start getting a real bead and a reminder on what you're here for in the first place, and that clarity, and really just start aiming things proactively towards that. What a good reminder, good word, PC. There's some pastors and some leaders on board. I know we've got some pastors right now from Florida, Jason Height, the Lakeside Church, Jason Delgado, Vibrant out in Mississippi. We've got folks tuning in from North Carolina. And we also have folks from West Africa, East Africa, Haiti online. So it's a global community that we're in right now. And a number of the people online are not only looking to, get momentum for themselves, lead themselves well, but they're thinking about leading others in this uncertain period. So would you speak to the person that's saying, hey, I feel like I'm getting unstuck, but I'm trying to build that momentum with others? What's some of your advice and counsel?
That it all begins with relationship, that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. I think that's what your ministry does so well, is that you're not just bringing them Jesus, but you're meeting their physical needs. And that's what opens up their hearts to the gospel. So right now in the middle of this crisis, as much as I hate it, I'm kind of enjoying it, honestly, because it has made people more open to the gospel because they have more physical needs than ever before. And there's never been a better time for the capital C church, the local church, to step into the crisis and just find a need and fill it, find a hurt and heal it. And that'll open up people's hearts to the gospel and increases our influence in their lives. And so what I've been encouraging people to do is to be innovative, be creative. You don't even have to look for expensive ways. It can be practical ways just to help your neighbor and help people that are in need. And that's the greatest way to have influence, honestly, is when people know that you unconditionally love them and that you want the best for them. And then you look to the things that they need and you do your very best to meet that need. I think they're more open to the gospel than ever before.
Powerful reminder, PC. Sounds a little bit like James, right? when he tells us, if you say to the brother or sister who's in need, here's my prayer, be well. Is what good is it? Like, put your faith into action. Would you mind just telling some of the audience some of the ways that that's manifesting itself through the church at Church of the Highlands right now. So you're leading teams in that way. What are some of the practical things that you guys are doing?
Well, what's been so interesting is we had the full gamut of very complicated and extensive to the simplest act of kindness. I mean, we had a team of people, unbeknownst to me, they just did this on their own, got together and figured out a way to do a drive-through testing, COVID-19 testing site at our facilities. And it turned into this major operation, tested more than 2,000 people in 4 days. And then, which was very complicated, by the way. But then you had this other group of people who volunteered at the exact same event. And their role was simply extending their arm toward the cars as they were lining up to get their testing and just telling them, we're praying for you. That's it. They were just standing there, just showing love. And it was so cool to see tears streaming down people's faces. And they would write little notes on pieces of paper and put it up against the glass of the car, just saying, you don't know how much this means to me. And the point being, it's that simple. We have a small group of ladies who are normally greeters in our church who are making about 200 masks a day. We have some young people in our youth group who are just making some grocery deliveries to some shut-ins. So it's just simple things. When we begin to get creative and think of ways to help people, we have more opportunities than ever before. And what I would want to remind everybody who's getting a little tired of the coronavirus and a little tired of the pandemic, that the gospel works best in a crisis. God's at his best in a crisis. The church has advanced more during years of persecution than it ever does in prosperity. And so this is our moment. We need to make sure we're seeing it the right way, because how you view things will determine how you do things. If you see this as a pain and this is like, man, I can't wait for it to be over, then you'll miss the moment. We'll miss the opportunity to help more people than we ever could before.
Well, PC, as you personally have been leading yourself in the very ways that you're talking about and leading teams, I've heard that some new doors have opened up. So as you guys have been faithful to the principles that you've outlined and you're trying to live by, even in challenge, there's some unique opportunities that are bigger than our area that have begun to come about. Would you mind sharing some of the things that you're seeing at a macro level, a bigger picture with us that's coming out of this?
Well, one of those is united prayer. I mean, it was right at the beginning of this pandemic that really felt impressed to the Lord that we needed to call the church to united prayer around the verse 2 Chronicles 7:14, because verse 13 of 2 Chronicles 7 says that there are going to be times where the heavens are going to be shut up and there's no rain. And there'll be times where there's plague, and then comma, verse 14, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. 4 conditions, by the way: humble, pray, seek, turn. If you'll do that, we will hear from heaven. God will forgive our sin and heal our land. So there was a kind of a prophetic word that came forward that if we would do that this plague would be mitigated, just like it was in the 40 years of wandering of the children of Israel. 4 times the priests stood up in the middle of the plague, called out to God, and the plague was stopped. And if that can happen in the Old Testament, how much more the New Testament church of the living God, the priest, the kingdom of priests that we've all become. And so we started this prayer effort that started literally with 25 pastors and leaders on one phone call that has now grown to literally hundreds of millions of people worldwide that are praying at 7:14 a.m., 7:14 p.m. and praying in their church services. And Micah, I've never seen anything like it before in my life. It in itself is a miracle of God, how God's brought together this many different movements of different, different expressions of the body of Christ. In fact, they don't all agree theologically, but we've come together under one banner, and that is the banner of unity and the banner of prayer in Jesus' name. And it's amazing. So if any of those that are on this Facebook Live want to check it out, you go to Unite714, unite714.com. And this is even a place for people around. I know you guys have done the same to sign up and be a part of it. But that, in a macro level, that should really encourage everybody that's listening that God is moving and God is unifying his church. And the prayer in John 17 that he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane is being realized. His church is being one. And of course, Psalm 133 says that if brothers and sisters will dwell together in unity, that's where God commands his blessing. And we're certainly expecting it. I think God's at work in the middle of this. I don't think he created it, but I think he's using it to reach more people. And my prayer really is not even so much the end of a pandemic, but it's the footprint of the gospel of Jesus to spread across the earth.
Well, so many powerful things embedded in that last run, and just a couple quick things I want to hit on from the global perspective. As many that are on this call know, we have around 500 team members, 489 team members dispersed globally in West Africa, East Africa, and Haiti. And speaking from that end of the picture, our teams across the globe are actually united and signed up and participating in. And I know right now that there's folks from the Ewe and Ga tribes in West Africa petitioning in their language in alignment. There's folks, Kisis, Kumbas, Kalenjins in Eastern Africa. We've got folks crying out to God in Creole in this united voice. And so what you're saying is obviously, of course, real, but we're experiencing that through the lens of our folks participating in that. And it's been powerful. And the second thing is, man, PC, as you were talking, I used to tell people that I feel like John 17 is the most undertaught or underpreached or undertaught passage. I remember reading it in college and just being like, man, we're constantly talking about the second tier doctrines that are, I'm not saying they're not important, but we can rally around the first tier things, and we're breaking up over second and third tier doctrine, and we're forgetting John 17, where Jesus is begging and praying that the disciples would be one, and he's telling us that the gospel will advance with that type of unity. So we're not here to listen to me out. We're here to pick from you, but just reinforcing what you're saying, Pastor. It's great to see John 17 literally coming together. And from our vantage point, seeing tribes and tongues in dispersed parts of the world join in this picture, we're just expecting God to continue to move, PC.
And I think it's a sign of the end of the times, honestly, because you're right. It hasn't happened in a long time. And I think I don't think we have it perfectly right yet, but definitely we're a generation that has gotten it better than most. There's more collaboration. There's more partnership. There's more, you know what, you're my brother, you're my sister, across denominational lines than ever before. And I'm not saying that to make us stop striving toward the unity that Jesus talked about, but I do want to pause and say it's better. It's it's better than it's ever been, and we should all be encouraged by that.
Pastor Chris, I know you've also interacted with government leaders at the highest level, nationally and both locally. If we move into that just for a moment, what are some of the things that you've seen that are giving you kind of a practical encouragement that's kind of forward looking? What are some of the things that you see coming down the pike that you're encouraged at the national level?
Well, you know, I don't want to step into the political, because that is definitely one of those areas that divide.
Yes.
But I am seeing, and I'm not talking about the president or the White House. I'm just talking about all leaders, both parties, are more open to the influence of the church than I've seen in my lifetime.
That's awesome.
I recently took a trip to DC to spend time with leaders, government officials, senators, congressmen, again, from both parties, and from both political parties. They're all saying, we can't make the difference like the church can. And they just said, we need you to pray. And in those governmental offices, we're asking God to move. And So it is way more than I've seen in my lifetime. I'm sure there were generations before where there were godly people at the national level, but you're also seeing it among church leaders. When I was on this phone call with these 25 leaders, this was across denomination. These weren't just the people in my tribe. In fact, several of them I'd never had a conversation with them before this phone call. So, and again, so there is a coming together and a collaboration to get more done than ever before. And I'm and everyone watching should be very encouraged by that.
That's awesome. That's a good reminder. Just want to let everybody know, Pastor Chris Hodges here. We're having a conversation about what's next, moving forward through uncertain times. We'll post this post interview. There's some valuable insights for you for us as individuals, as leaders, and then it's great to get some insight into the bigger picture as you see it. Pastor Chris, are there any other things that you would just say are just kind of on your heart, related or unrelated, that you would just want to speak into this global audience that's gathered here?
Well, I'm actually beginning to prepare my message for this coming Sunday, and I think we're 9 or 10 weeks into this pandemic, and we're starting to see not only all these positive things, but we're also seeing some of the negative fallout of it. That there are, while we might have flattened one curve, this coronavirus curve, there are other curves that are spiking. We're seeing addiction spike, suicide is spiking. We're seeing a spiking of child abuse, abortion, and there's a lot of things that should matter to every pastor and leader that goes beyond the physical. It's deeper to the emotional and the psychological that I think we should all be prepared for on the heels of this pandemic, that the effects that it's had on marriages. I mean, domestic violence is up. I guess it's because everybody's quarantined and kind of sick of each other. I don't know what it is, but there's child abuse, unfortunately, is on the rise. And so we're seeing bodies protected through distancing, but souls getting ravaged right now. And so I'm really concerned about it, honestly, Micah, that there's going to be an emotional fallout of this that we as leaders are going to need to be in tune to and see a healing in our lives. In the stages of, I think Rick Warren taught this, the stages of grief begins with shock. Oh my goodness, there's a pandemic, to sorrow. My goodness, I've lost my job. I've lost my freedoms. I've lost the ability to go out, to struggling, which is where most people are, because when you take something from people, we always replace it with something. So this pandemic created a vacuum, if you will, and now people are filling the vacuum. And it could be with what looks like innocent things like watching Netflix to 3 o'clock in the morning. There was nothing wrong with that. I've got the time. But now we're getting all of these potentially negative messages constantly fed into our minds and our hearts. And again, structure's gone, connection's gone. And all that to say is that I just think I would warn every person right now who has replaced the vacuum that's created with something that's not good. I would say to you, though, that we have a merciful God who loves to forgive, who loves to give you a second chance, loves to give you a fresh start, to just, all he ever asks of us is to repent. And we come to him and say, Lord, I've let some things in my life that are not right. And I need a fresh start. He'll give it to you, and then begin to intentionally replace those things, that vacuum, with healthier alternatives, with, the things that feed our souls and keep our souls healthy. And then finally be in tune to those that are really feeling brokenness. I mean, I had just this week, Micah, we had a contemporary, a friend, take his own life, a pastor who, I don't know the circumstances of it yet. It's kind of fresh. It only happened a few days ago, but it was just a painful reminder again that there's a lot of people struggling right now. And I would just close this little thought by saying the only pathway to peace out of the cycle of shock, sorrow, and struggle is surrender. It's only when you come to the place where you say, Lord, I'm terrible at being the Lord of my own life, be the Lord of my life. And surrendering the control of your life to Jesus, and then giving up control of the things you can't control. And it's the old Proverbs chapter 3, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, you know, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he all of a sudden he makes that path straight again. And so just want to minister to everybody that's watching right now, because I've seen people put on the mask, but I know deeply they're in their souls, they're not doing well. And so I want to encourage people in that surrender.
I want to invite you to hang on for one more minute. I'm going to ask Pastor Chris to just pray over us and pray us out. A couple quick things. First, look Pastor Chris up on Instagram and follow him. He's got a great book called What's Next, a number of great books. I've read them all, but I would encourage you to get What's Next. It'll be a great tool for you personally and help you as you lead others. Also, just want to forecast next Wednesday, 2 p.m., Mason Crosby, Packers legend, all-time scoring leader, Pro Bowler. He'll be on. We'll be talking about playing with purpose next Wednesday at 2 p.m. So without further ado, Pastor Chris, would you mind just praying over those gathered as we leave here and make a difference, even though there's some uncertainty? We decide, we commit to moving forward in uncertain times.
Well, thanks, Micah. And again, you model it so well. Everything that Vapor is about realizing that your life is very short. It's a mist. It's a vapor to make a difference for eternity. And Father, I pray, God, we never lose the perspective, even in our desire, God, to go back to whatever we call normal. God, we were never meant to have all of our happiness on this earth. We're passing through only really to live our lives in such a way that makes a difference. And so, Father, I fan into flame the gift of God and the purpose of God and the calling of God on everyone who's watching. God, let us all be reminded today that we're here to glorify you and to impact the lives of others for eternity. And so, Father, forgive us for being selfish, or forgive us for being distracted, or even in all the uncertainty, the disorientation that comes from uncertainty. God, we recommit our lives afresh to you, to live for you, to honor you. And God, we thank you for giving us that kind of a hope and a purpose and a calling. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pastor Chris Hodges, thank you for your time. Audience, thank you for tuning in. Check us out at vaporministries.org. Follow us on Facebook and or Instagram. And again, get What's Next and follow Pastor Chris on Instagram. God bless you all. See you next Wednesday, 2 p.m.